Put you on mute for a second.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Now arrives the hour of action.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury.
To subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws.
All experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And we're going to take our country back from these people.
Gain up really high. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Marches Live. Having some serious audio issues here. Hold on. All kinds of weird stuff is going on. Can't really hear myself, which is funny. How's everybody doing? Sorry I missed you last week. Last Wednesday was the 4th and final day of the Million Parent March, the 100 Parent March. And I was thinking about doing a show, but just wanted to see what happened on Wednesday. And then today, we're all set up, but like I said in the ad for the show, Rod McCall had kind of a personal issue he needed to deal with. Nothing serious with his family, but a friend of his, and really had to focus on him. So I hope that goes okay, and maybe next week we can get him on the show and go over that second part, because I didn't want to bring up, you know, the reasons why he speaks and shares his story before you could see it in person when he spoke at the march. And you know, unfortunately he was only given like 10 minutes to speak, and it wasn't in front of a huge crowd. Most of the people there, I believe, know of Eric, which is great. You know, it was great to see people we all knew, and everything. But and there's some new people there, obviously, that hadn't heard his story. But I wanted to give him the chance to tell everybody here who may not have heard it live or heard it anywhere else. So we'll try that next week. So in lieu of that, I was going to do kind of like a call-in show, but Kirk offered to come on to the show, and Monday was his first live broadcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, of course. So welcome, Kirk, to the show. Let me turn your audio on. There we go. How are you, Kirk?
Howdy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, bro. So what do you think about the response you got Monday on Law for Dummies?
Overwhelmed. I had no idea that that was actually really going out live like that. I mean, I know you said something about broadcasting live, but I didn't realize all that, because you and I that was like short notice.
Yes.
We put that together in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, we did.
So it was kind of shooting from the hip, and most of the time when I do my Law for Dummies show, half the time I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. So,
sure.
Most of the stuff I do is just off the top of my head. I don't have any set plans, or, I've been at this for 20 years, studying, researching, reading. This isn't something you're just going to learn overnight.
Right.
This has taken me years to get this wealth of knowledge that I have, and it's, I still don't know everything, and I don't claim to know everything. So, I definitely want to learn from other people that know stuff that I don't know, but I'm definitely willing to share what I do know.
Sure.
And I don't have a problem saying I don't know something. I'll tell you, I just don't know about that.
Well, when you were on the original Million Parrot March Live show, before the current name, the Marches Live, I know, I have a tendency to go off on a tangent. I hear a word that interests me, and I'm like, and that seemed to happen more than usual with you, because it was so interesting, and I hadn't set up Wheel of Judiciary the way it currently is. I think I did edit parts, and we did have video questions, I think. Yeah, we did, because I remember Mark called in, and he was on there too, and I had a video question with him on there. But the first thing I noticed was you had a lot of information that you didn't get to, and we talked about doing a second show. So,
right.
Actually, it probably is better that you have your own show. And when I listened to it for the first time the other day, I think I listened to it one other time. But it's one of those things, like, you never put two and two together. I wasn't sure. I knew Randall had a show on Mondays, and I knew you had a show, but I didn't realize those were the same show at the time. And then I was doing a show on Mondays too, the community conference Call to Action. But realizing, okay, your show is on Monday, I think it would be a really good thing to get your voice out there because of the knowledge from the last 20 years you have, and it definitely seemed to work from my end.
Yeah.
The interaction you had was fantastic, and there was a couple of things you touched on that I know we talked about before, which applies to us, which I'm reiterating wouldn't be a big deal. Get some of these things people need to hear more than just once, so it soaks in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know that's the case for me. And the past, I can't really even. I've been going through this. My divorce was 5 years ago. My ex-wife and I are getting along very well now, but it's really been the last year I've been doing the lion's share of the research I know, and a lot of that knowledge comes from this show and talking to people like yourself, who just your base knowledge is up here because of the practice. My practice and my base knowledge is down here somewhere. So I was super thrilled to have you live and hear your interactions with the guest that called in. because even though there are some things that nobody has the exact answer to, because it's some of the things that the family court and juvenile courts are doing is illegal, but you had an answer in, like, you need to go here and ask them why they're doing that, and that would be something I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have said, well, we should talk to Kirk about that and see what he thinks. That would have been my answer, probably. So it's good. I'm really glad you have that, and it's a great way to start off the week. If we, continuing to do it, and then going right into, I think it's great to have you on Mondays, and then Far From Normal on Tuesdays, which is they always have 2 guests, and then the Marches, whatever I'm doing here, which is typically an interview show.
Right.
And then I use that show for Wheel of Judiciary on Friday. And then I'm kind of looking for one more show to try to tie it all in, because I don't have to do Wheel of Judiciary necessarily on Fridays. I could do it on Saturdays. And I don't know who's doing a show on Fridays, but that's something I'm looking for. If any of you out there know of a show on Fridays that you'd love to see live, let me know. But so you got a good response. I looked at the stats on that video, and for a first live video, I mean, your first caller was a regular listener. She's listened before. That was obvious.
Yeah, Crystal.
I'm going to go into settings here and add a delay to your video, because I'm picking up the audio first. Let me just real quick. So tell me about Crystal and what you guys have talked about in the past, if you don't mind.
I'm not exactly sure how she found me or whatever. I don't know if it was through the Estranged Parents and Grandparents group. She came on and started asking questions, and we connected on Facebook, and I started talking about the DOJ stuff. And I had just come across the DOJ stuff and read through that, and I'm like, oh, this is actually, even though I know how corrupt our government is, I know how corrupt our system of government is, the judicial branch, all 3 branches, but it's just, this is part of that wealth of knowledge. I know what's happened. I know why we are where we're at.
Right.
So it's hard to sit here and talk about what we can do process-wise in court when I know the corruption is there, and they're going to deny. But things are trying, as far as I can see, things are trying to be changed.
Right.
So the use of the DOJ website, and I was just on there again this morning looking at it, it's like a 1-page questionnaire, and you can make your claims right there, and the Department of Justice actually takes on your case. They'll start the investigations, but
really?
The thing is what keeps coming back is that there's not enough complaints coming in for them to justify an investigation.
Okay.
So this is one reason why I would really like to push this is, the second your rights are violated, you go to court, you realize that your rights have just been violated, go right over here on the DOJ site and file your complaints. All of us, every single one, and the minute it happens, don't wait 6 months to a year down the road. As soon as it happens, get on there.
I wish I could get Michael Gill to call in, because he was using the DOJ a lot, and then recently there was something where he felt like they were not very helpful. I wish we could get his 2 cents on that. Oh, there's Susan. Hey, Susan.
What I see with him, he's a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, he's cautious too, and you know, he's been at this a long time, and some people find him to be a little bit short, but you know, after a decade and a half of this, specifically, you know, family, or at least a decade, you know, I'd be running a little bit thin too, I think. But he's a cautious, intelligent man who has been in jail for this, and an attempt on his life because of this stuff. He calls people out, not just family court, but drug corruption, drugs that seem to be, you know, connections between court officials and drug cartels. It's pretty, it's amazing, the stuff he's finding, and that's mainly New Hampshire. Live free or die, baby.
Yeah, you know, when you have a situation where your life's being threatened, and you know, attempts of murder on your life, you're doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
You're you know, people don't like to get exposed, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen, is we need to get these people exposed for what they are and what they're doing.
Well, he found he found a link to Lee County, Florida, and I just saw my ex-wife popped in, and her best friend's ex-husband now used to do a lot of work trapping in Lee County, and I rode around with him way back then. And that place, if you want to make things disappear, you go to Lee County. It's all canals with little bridges, hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of alligators in those canals. We stopped at this one place, and we're just like, how many people have gone missing right here? You know, it's crazy. Just a road in the middle of nowhere with the biggest freaking gators. Why are there so many gators right here on a main road in the middle of nowhere? What are they eating? There's more gators right in this spot than a zoo. What could they possibly be eating? A lot of missing people is that's my guess. But so when I heard him making connections to Lee County, I was like, oh, that's scary. That's really scary.
Yeah, people can come up missing pretty easy.
Yeah, and if you've got a trucking company that goes between New Hampshire and Lee County, pretty easy to get people to Lee County that way. You know what I mean? So no, it's he's cautious. He's a cautious man, and rightfully so. So I was grateful that he came on the show. That was the last show of the Million Parent March, Million Parent March Live. That was getting really close to the event. And yeah, I won't go into all the reasons why that the name changed, but it seemed appropriate to separate the show from the event, given that there was different events with different people and very little cooperation. So that's why the name changed. But and then the other thing, getting back to the DOJ, what is your take? And I am just learning about the AFCC. What is your take on the AFCC?
I don't have any clue what that is.
That's what I said to the person telling me about it. So I don't even remember. I'm like, what's the AFCC? What does it stand for? I don't know. It's the American Family Court Coalition, American Family Court something or other. And you look into this, and they are the people who created and train, like the GALs. They control the psychologist side of things.
Wow.
Yeah, and all. And they're also a group of people who go to different countries under this name of being like, you know, we're for justice. We want to help your justice system by creating all this extra stuff for you guys to do. It'll be great. And they're a nonprofit, and we found that, or not we, but this person who I'm just starting to understand the AFCC, had made connections to all kinds of nonprofit groups who fund the AFCC, and also some of the welfare money, since the AFCC is a nonprofit itself, some of that extra money from the Title IV incentives may be going to the AFCC because they regulate, recruit judges, GALs, and others, and even psychologists and other therapists. They train and recruit these individuals. So maybe that's something you and I both could look into, because this individual called me up out of the blue, no, not out of the blue, but asked me why nobody was really paying attention to the AFCC, and I said, I don't know what the AFCC is. That's why I'm not. So so now I'm starting to look into it, and it's pretty incredible so far. I mean, I don't have any reason not to believe this person who I talked to, so it's worth researching. But
yeah, it sounds like a training program on how to rip our kids off some more judicially.
Exactly what it sounds like. Right.
But, you know, that's kind of the stuff I like to talk about, is how to deal with these crooked people.
Right. Well, we should do some research.
I have other names I'd like to call them, but...
Oh, sure. Well, you know, we're not on Blog Talk. We're just on, you know, whatever. We can say whatever we want. I'm not worried.
Yeah, but, you know, people watch, people listen.
They do.
And if you want people to listen to you and hear what you have to say, you know, you can't be offensive. You know, even though we have the right to freedom of speech and you can talk however you want.
Yeah.
But if you're going to actually get people to listen to you, you have to, you know, speak in kind of a normal language so people don't get offended, because a lot of people, you know, are sensitive to that stuff. And, you know, if you're actually going to get a hold of, you know, religious type people, good, what I would consider good, upstanding type people, whether they're Christians, Mormons, Catholics, you know, whatever religion they're in, you can't have offensive language. You know, they'll get offended and they'll just turn away.
Right.
So it would, you know, it kind of is counterintuitive and counterproductive.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I try to clean my act up and speak normal, I guess.
Leslie just
so we can
made a
actually
comment.
get this information out there and people actually listen to what's going on.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's a difference between freedom of speech and saying things that are just plain offensive. And like, you know, living in Florida for such a long time, every once in a while you'd hear hate type of speech, and if you confront them about it, it says, well, it's a free country. I'm like, yeah, but you sound like an asshole. You know, there's a difference between freedom of speech and offending people. And if you want to offend people, fine. But if you don't, then don't. Leslie just brought up a point that I remember, and this is where things get shady. And I've heard this before. The Fatherhood Initiative. Now this, if everybody remembers, there was the Fatherhood Initiative that Obama was trying to do, but that's different. This Fatherhood Initiative started with Newt Gingrich back in the Clinton area, saying that, you know, single mothers need to get off of welfare and blah, blah, blah. And that came from this, and I don't know what it is. And when you hear this way right wing of our movement, you know, of the protected mother saying the father's rights movement is bad, they're not talking about TFRM, the social media site, where, you know, like any of that. They're talking about this right here. They're talking about this father's rights initiative that was created by the Clintons, and packaged by Newt Gingrich in the 90s, which basically just created this AFCC, which then created more stuff, more band-aids on the root problem, like more psychologists, therapists, guardian ad litems, and all this stuff. So that's something that I've always been intrigued about. Okay, these women talk about this father's side of thing that's bad, and so through this AFCC thing, I'm starting to. That's where this is stemming from. Apparently, it has nothing to do with fathers' rights and everything to do with money, and
yeah,
it really muddies the water when you start talking about this stuff, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm anti the fathers' rights movement. Obviously, I have a lot of friends there. I'm an editor for the Vermont fathers' rights movement. But there is something connected to Hillary Clinton and Newt Gingrich and the AFCC, and I'm not 100% sure what it is, but Leslie Bauer seems to know a bit about it. So,
well, my guess is it's all part of that Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I mean, it's world domination, basically a communist regime. You know, you no longer have rights. You do what you're told, and if we don't like you doing what you're doing, we're going to change that. We'll just take this from you, and we'll take that from you, and you don't have a say in it. And there's no more, like I said, no more rights, no more due process.
Exactly.
You don't have rights. You get told what your rights are. You get told what to do.
And this is what the AFCC is doing. They'll use anybody to. I mean, when it comes to making money, people will do almost anything. And in this situation with the AFCC, they used. It seems to me they used conservative churches and that kind of route to say one thing is bad, one thing is better, and make money off of it, when they're both the freaking same thing, and the root of the problem is this. And that was the problem with the 90s period, is there was all these, we got to fix this, but nothing like, what is the problem? There was no, okay, what is the problem? Let's just fix everything. And they created all these new problems. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's something we should both learn more about. But getting back to the DOJ again, so if you have a situation where you've tried to appeal something, you've even gone to the federal appellate court, the federal appeals court, and they deny you, your suggestion is to go to the DOJ and complain and say, look, here's the stamp. I remember you saying that. Here's the file stamp that's saying I filed this, but they rejected it. Why aren't these people filing? Right, and that's where...
I mean, yeah, that's straight up on the DOJ. I mean, it even says in there, you can do it online, but if you're going to submit any kind of documents, you have to do a mail-in complaint so that you can mail in your documents. So, I mean, do I trust him? No, but is it worth a shot? Yes.
Yeah. Of course.
And so far, it's worked for Crystal. So
it has. Okay.
There's no reason not to try it. And if we get enough people starting to file these complaints, they're going to have to pay attention. You know, we're talking about out here in this movement about making a movement towards fixing stuff, but I mean, how many people are going on the DOJ website and filing complaints?
That's true. Probably not enough.
I mean, you and I can sit here and do videos all day long and talk about law and talk about what's corrupt and how bad it is and what's going on and how bad I'm screwed and they took my kids and they did this and they did that. But, I mean, you got to do something about it.
Right.
And the problem is a lot of people just don't know what to do. And, you know, I I don't even know necessarily what to do to fix this, but I definitely have some options available that we can try.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I don't want to talk over people's heads because, you know, I can tell you, okay, writ of quo warranto. That's a challenge to the authority.
Mm-hmm.
By what warrant are you acting? Under what delegation of authority are you acting? But that's a pretty serious writ, and you better know what you're doing. I'm not even to that level yet where I'm ready to start filing writ of quo warrantos, but I can tell you it's a powerful writ.
We're getting
close. It's a straight-up challenge. You're either in compliance with the law, and you better be able to prove your proper delegation of authority, or you're screwed.
There was a fellow who he was planning on coming to the event, but he wasn't 100% ready, and because of the messiness, he decided not to go, and we were still going to do the show, but I decided to have Ron on instead since he was going and he was speaking. But this individual has an incredible idea that I can't wait to share with everybody, and it's kind of on those lines what you just mentioned. But there's a couple other ideas that people have, and so, you know, because of the show, I hear a lot of, you know, what people are thinking, what their ideas, and they come back around. And so I'm trying to put a couple of folks together to combine a few things and do everything at once, because even this fellow's idea, he's going to need some support from at least 12 states. And so the thought that I'm putting together, it's just barely been mentioned, and hopefully I can talk some more about it soon. But we're playing an end game. Like,
yes.
By the end of 2018, before, and this has been since Trump got in office and we had a single party administration. Really, the goal I thought in my head is to get this done before the elections, before we have another two-party system. We have a better chance, whether Republican, Democrat, whatever. If we have a one-party system, that we have a much greater chance to make change, and get a majority vote, and less chance of getting filibuster. With a single party system.
There's the one remedy that I'm aware of, and it's the best one.
Best one.
The best remedy that I have about roughly around 5 different remedies that we can try and solve this. But the number one remedy is the Article 5, and it's not the CONCON, Constitutional Convention. It's an audit. And what it does is it goes through every single congressional act that has ever been made and checks it against the Constitution to see if it's lawful.
Right.
Not legal. See, there's a difference between legal and lawful. Law is law. Constitutions, declarations, that's law. Legal is in the statutory realm, which isn't law. So, when you have our Congress who makes a congressional act, let's take the Patriot Act. Okay, that happened right after 9/11. Imagine that. So without going off on that tangent, because that's a whole other tangent, the Patriot Act is unlawful.
Update people.
You want to talk about violations of due process of law and the law of the land? There's a prime example. So with the audit, that would be abolished immediately.
Right. The Patriot. Tell me again. I have a thought in my head what the Patriot Act is. Just a summary, real quick, for people who don't know exactly what you're referring to.
Well, in a nutshell, it turns everybody into a terrorist.
So that was where my thought was going. It means even if you're an American citizen overseas, they can go after you for whatever reason. It's like being in contempt of court. They can say this word and they can kill you, basically, or bring you into Guantanamo or whatever the hell.
Right. Yep.
So, and we know that the word contempt, or the phrase contempt of court, is now being used similar to the way the word treason was used in the Constitution. That's the only crime that is specifically mentioned in the Constitution is treason. And the courts are using contempt of court for my feelings are hurt, you're in contempt of court. Or you hurt the bailiff's feelings, you're in contempt of court. Or you owe money to the court, whether it's child support or even a freaking Sears card now, because they give it to a creditor. The creditor takes you to court. They only need to prove, they only need to say that they did their due diligence in notifying you, but in fact they never notified you. Then you're in contempt of court because you owe money on a Sears card. People are in jail for owing the money to Sears or JCPenney. This is bringing us right back 200 years to debtors' prisons. It doesn't matter if it's debtors' jails. It's contempt of court. Using that term is now treason. The way they're using it.
There shall be no imprisonment for debt.
Right. And so all these things, you know, and we don't want to necessarily create problems here. Something was missed, and as a society, as a people, we're going to help them fix the problem. That's the way we're going to term this. You guys missed something, so we're just going to help you. There's going to be some consequences to missing it. You know, tort claims, whether intentional or involuntary, people are at fault here. But we're going to help you, help the American people, and we're going to change this and hold some people accountable and put in place the accountability where it should have been all along.
Right. So with that part there in mind, this is why I keep telling people, get local. Get with your local representatives. Find out the ones that are actually, you know, willing to support the Constitution and stand up for the Constitution.
Right.
I mean, you know, we've had this Bundy trial stuff going on here for almost 2 years now. You know, there's guys still sitting in prison down in Nevada that have been locked up for 19, 20 months now. The thing is the state of Idaho, I believe, I don't even know what the number is now. Last I knew, it was like 39 state representatives that have signed this letter to Jeff Sessions saying, hey, you need to look into what's going on down here in Nevada because that's unlawful. That's in violation of the Constitution. This is not right. Now, if we could get, you know, that kind of numbers from every state, the representatives from the states going, hey, this is not right.
Right.
This has got to stop. Things are going to change because our representatives, they're basically the ones that have at least a little more power than we do because they're the ones that's Congress.
Right.
They're the ones that go up there. They're the ones that go to Washington, D.C.
Exactly. And that's kind of what ties into this whole idea is doing stuff a little bit more locally, possibly at every federal appeals court. How many federal appeals courts are there? Again, I don't even remember. 20. I had it in Wheel of Judiciary. I could pull up the answer here in probably a minute.
I thought there was only 9.
I think that was an answer and that was one of the answers to the questions, but I think that was incorrect. I think there are 12 or 13, I believe, or maybe 14. I'll Google it right now. What the heck? I've got... Whoa, there goes my mic. Let me unplug this. That'll take care of that. Yeah, the nice thing about this new system is I have so much CPU, I can... How many...
How many federal district courts do we have?
I can only type with one hand. I don't have no feeling in this hand. It is 13. 13 appellate courts. Yeah. So let me, I'll pull this up and I'll show everybody this. Let's put this over there. And then I'll do a little display capture action. And we want that one. Okay. So I know you can't see this, Kirk, unfortunately, but so for everybody at home, these are all the federal appellate courts. And so I don't know if that's enough. There's 13 of them. We might need to cover more areas, because if you're in Washington State, for instance, your nearest federal court is
California.
California. And the next one is New Mexico or Colorado, and then it's regions. There's one in the West Coast, one in the Midwest, one in the Rust Belt. Yeah, and then New England and New York. There's so there's one in New England, one in New York, one in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, and there's 4 in the space where there's only one on the West Coast. That's
the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Yeah, the Ninth Circuit. There it is. So that's one of the issues that we'll be talking about in these ideas of how to go about this major end game idea, is whether or not to have events at each federal appellate court, or I lost you. Kirk's having some CPU issues. He had to. There we go. You're back.
How about now?
Yep.
I just decided to.
It's
cut out there.
It's frozen, but we'll have to get you. Because I know Bud is having the same issue with his computer, and for like $100 at Best Buy, you can get 2 RAM cards that will like quadruple your CPU, which comes in handy. I had to get my old laptop I used to broadcast from. I had to get 2 pretty expensive ones for it to work.
Yeah, you're talking about RAM though.
Yeah, those are RAM cards, but it does help.
Yeah.
It does help the overall CPU usage if your processing speed and your memory is all, if everything is higher, it helps the overall. At least that's my understanding.
But system memory.
Right.
Now my other desktop machine over here, it should just do fine. I actually just dug out an old webcam, so
oh, cool.
Maybe I'll get that set up and we'll go through that machine, because that's a quad core. I mean, it's a heavy duty machine.
There you go. Yeah, that would help. I mean, this new to me system I have, it has 2 graphics cards in it, and it's certainly not the best system in the world, but it's a ginormous upgrade from what I was using before. And the main reason I got this one and not something else was the guy I got this from, he was a tech guy and was able to, I told you earlier, he took apart my burned out hard drive and put the pieces into this machine and saved all my files. And so I figured if he had the ability to do that, he knew that what he was talking about, this computer was actually what it was. So
yeah,
I unfortunately am not super knowledgeable in that area, so I can just play.
I don't know if you got video. That'd be.
I have your video. You mean now or the old video?
Yeah, you still see the video?
I do. There's a slight.
Okay.
It's just slightly.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
I can't really show you like names and stuff on it because it's prototype. But this is a 1 terabyte flash drive.
Oh wow. Jesus.
That can go in your laptop.
That would help a lot. What are you using?
You know, it's flash memory. It's not. There's no discs.
Right.
There's no platters.
That's kind of like a solid state drive. That way.
Well, it's still digital. That's that drive there is just straight like a thumb drive.
I see. Can you use it as backup?
Flash memory.
You can use it as backup memory for the computer.
It's a hard drive.
Oh, okay.
But it's flash memory. You know how fast your little USB sticks are. That's flash memory. You know how fast that reads and writes, right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, imagine your whole hard drive being flash memory. How fast that information would transfer.
Yeah.
So that's the new technology that's coming out.
Right. Oh, Nathan's making fun of me. Up your nose, buddy. So yeah, better computer, better everything overall. All right, well let's get off of the CPU stuff and back to let's get back to your thoughts on your show. So Crystal was her name who came on. She already had watched your show. It seemed like you had some newcomers pop in through Facebook, and they seem to be, oh, everybody, I'm not putting my arm around Kirk. I'm just elevating my arm. Because see how my arm is like this? Well, the way it's set up, it looks like I've got my arm around you. And it's just because if I go like this, the whole thing falls. It's all numb. It just feels weird. They'd cut me open like...
Yikes.
But I haven't had to take any of these yet. Take one.
Yeah, you got your goopy pills there?
Yeah, hydrocodone. Oxycontin. Yeah. I don't have a problem with stuff like that. I've never had any worries about becoming addicted to pain pills, but I know people do. Different people's chemistries are different.
Well, it's technically heroin.
Right, and I'm not going to get into my past there, but
right,
never had any issues with heroin. Never anything I could deal with for very long. I'd throw up like crazy, so I didn't try it for very long. Maybe that's why hydrocodone doesn't bother
I don't
me.
do pharmaceuticals.
No, me neither.
I mean, most what I take is Aleve.
Yeah,
that's it.
I take a lot of Advil, but that's why I wanted something different. I'm like, if I'm really going to be in pain, I already take like 8 Advil at a time, liquid gels.
Ooh.
So I want something different. So I'm not taking like 20 freaking Advils or something crazy. But
right.
So yeah, my arm's elevated. You had a really good response, and your responses to their questions were point on, and everything seemed to flow so good until the ending when I wish we had Zoom set up for your show so we could have just switched over and you could have continued on. But at the same time, you would have stayed on all night answering people's questions because that's the type of person you are, You're just a nice guy that way. And so you filled up those 2 hours. I was there just in case if you needed me to jump in and yammer something along, go off on my own tangent, which is, why like your peak viewing was like I think 21 on your first show, and my like 100th show is like at 5. That's probably why I always go off on tangents. But You didn't need my help at all. You had the callers calling in because the name Law for Dummies is catchy. People see that and be like, I'm a dummy. I need to know the law. So.
Well, I actually got some flack for that one.
You did?
Having the Law for Dummies. Oh, well, you're calling everybody dummies and that kind of stuff, And it's do people realize that there's a series out there for dummies? And I'm going to show you the one I got right now.
Constitution for Dummies. And you know what?
Constitutional Law for Dummies.
There you go.
There's a whole series of books for dummies out there.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be offensive. It's a reality. I mean, if you can actually admit to yourself that, hey, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about or what I'm doing here, and you take the time to educate yourself, there's no problem with that. But to sit there and say that you do know what you're talking about and you don't,
right?
Or the other part is the willful ignorance is, well, I just don't care.
Yeah, and that's where
that one just boggles my mind. Well, I just don't care. How can you not care? Because it's not happening to you, so it doesn't really matter. Right. So, and
that's
and I can say from personal experience, the CPS side of stuff, it has happened to me. That I was the child.
Yep.
Back in 1985 when my family was ripped apart, thrown into foster care, and I was withheld from my mother, even though my stepdad was the one that went to prison. My mom didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And it was, pretty close to a year that I'd been in foster care, and basically I caused enough problems for them where they're like, you know what, you can have your kid back.
Good. How old were you at the time?
It was right before I turned 14.
That's right.
It was right after school. School had just gotten out for the summer, and July is my birthday, and basically I turned 14 right after I went into foster care.
Yeah.
And, I went through 5 or 6 different foster homes. The first one I was in was awesome, amazing, great people, took really good care of all of us.
Yeah.
They decided to go to an all-girls foster home, so I had to get moved, and then it was from there, it just was downhill, and I started doing the runaway thing and got thrown into a group home. I ran away from there. The caseworker in my case from CPS basically told me that if my mom wanted me, that I would be back home with her. And at that time, everything that my mom and I had been through, because that was actually her third marriage, so I'd been through a lot with my mom, and I just basically stood up, reached across the desk, and socked her in the mouth because she's a liar. That's one thing I don't put up with, and I don't tolerate liars and thieves.
The social worker,
and she lied. Tried to lie to me to my face, and trying to steal me for my mom and steal my mom for me. So, right. That struck a nerve in me, and I just reacted. And at 14 years old, I don't know.
No, you know what? A 14-year-old brain is not fully matured. A mature brain, that happens somewhere between 21 and 28, depending on certain things. And I know exactly what you were feeling. I didn't go. My brother was in foster care. I was in juvie, and when I wanted to get out, the placement, the placement, whatever you call them, the president, the coordinators, whatever, they were in court saying, no, he should stay with us. We think he should stay with us. And I was like, who the fuck? Who are you to be telling me what you guys think about me? I don't know you from anything. I was pissed. And if they said something like that about my parents across the table, within reach, at 16, if any of my old friends are listening to this or listen to it later, I'm sure they know what I would have done. It's not their place. It's simply not their place. to fight against somebody else's parent, to fight against a child's free will, especially 14 years old.
Right.
I mean, that's why CPS goes after babies and takes babies off of their mother's breasts right in the hospital. Is they don't have any attachment yet. They don't have to worry about that.
Right. Yep.
And that's where...
Yeah, the sooner that they can break that bond with the parent, or keep the parent from having a bond with their child, the better for them.
Yeah. It's really, with the incentives now, we didn't have those incentives back then the way they are now. I was there in 92. And you add on the incentives of 97, and then the further incentives in 2002, where they upped it to every year you get the incentives until the child reaches 18. And some CPSs are saying, well, you guys are paying child supports from 21, we should get our incentives until the child's 21, or blah blah blah.
Yep.
It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And to me, there's one root of the problem. And to get to that problem, I think, your thought of reporting to the DOJ, or maybe somehow we should merge that thought in with the people's ideas who I'm talking about, doing this next thing, this end game. Because we have to do something. We can't let this go on. I mean, fuck, I think 5 years from now. It can't go on another 5 years. We got to stop it.
Well, that's the thing about that remedy that I was just talking about under Article 5, is that only takes one representative to initiate that. One.
Article 5.
You get one representative that says, hey, I want an audit. I want an audit of every single congressional act and every federal, because that's where the acts are, is where the law, their statutory law is created.
Okay.
So if you do an audit of every single congressional act, and that's in this book right here.
Let me see. Turt, bring it to your left a little bit. Okay, the Annals of America. Interesting. Well, I pulled up Article 5 right here for everybody. I wish I could wish I had a better way of showing this to you guys instead of scrolling and scrolling.
And I have it's missing volume 1, but I have 2 through 21, so I have 20 volumes, everything from 1755 all the way to 1986.
How many volumes of Article 5 are there?
Oh no, this is the Annals of America.
Okay. You know what I can
Article 5 is in the Constitution.
I'll have Gabriella tell us what Article 5 is.
There's only one paragraph in Article 5, and that's the mode of amendment. The Congress, whenever 2/3 or both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or on the application of the legislature of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for the proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by the convention in 3/4 thereof, as the one of the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808, so 1808, shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clause of the 9th section of this article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate.
Yeah.
And that Article 5 there is, that's the funny thing about it. It doesn't really say anything about doing an audit.
No.
But when you read Federalist Papers, that's this book right here.
The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid to all intents and purposes, as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state, without its consent, shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate.
So that's what Gabriella had to say about that, which is pretty much the exact same thing. That came from, the USConstitution.net, Article 5 Amendment.
Right out of this right here, what I was just reading.
Yep. That's the Idaho Constitution, state constitution? Is that what it said?
Yeah, this is the one I was talking about on Law for Dummies. This is Idaho State Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the United States Constitution.
Yep.
This is put out by the Secretary of State. This is the 2017 edition. This is law.
Right.
This is actual law.
Right. Yeah, you go through Constitution state by state, and it's incredible some of the amendments that you see in there that are totally in benefit of lawyers and judges. Most states, attorneys don't give an oath on the Constitution, they give an oath to the court. So, and then the judges give their oath on the Constitution, but as we know, these appointed judges do not follow the Constitution. So what good is an oath to the court if the court isn't following the Constitution? That means all attorneys are right. Breaking the law.
Yep.
And that, of course, goes along with police officers, any type of enforcement officer. You see a lot of their uniforms will have the American flag with a court yellow fringe around it. What does that tell you? That means they're not for the people. They're officers of the court. And if the court isn't following the Constitution, those officers aren't going to follow the Constitution. So what do we have?
Yeah, that's a false flag. What I call it, the Jolly Roger.
Right, exactly.
Fake flag. That is not our flag.
Now, if you see yellow fringe around the American flag, to us, that is a false flag. Or to most people who are true Americans, who understand the Constitution and understand how this country was created, how law was created, how our legal system was based on due process, our government was based, on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This false flag with the yellow fringe follows none of that, and is only serving itself. Any law that is created, any politician who are former lawyers, any law they create are in lawyers' interests. They're not going to make any laws that wouldn't benefit themselves, that would benefit the people. If they did, we wouldn't have family court. They would have implemented something we already used that was optional back in 1970.
Well, see, that's the thing is, if you read the Constitution, Article 1 or wait, is it Article 3? Pardon me. Yeah, Article 3, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation, which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Section 2, extent of judicial power. So this is the limitations here. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity. We are to have suits at law. So what when I talk about law, it has to be law, not statutory.
Right.
Statutory, that's not law. And suits of equity, that has to do with real estate.
Mm-hmm. Civil. Right?
That's it. Well, no. That's estate. There's no such thing as civil if you read the Constitution. It's either a suit at law. Did you violate the law? Is that a moral wrong or not? Back to the black and white.
Well, the two forms of
it's
law.
Either morally right or it's morally wrong, and that's a suit at law. Anything to do with real estate, estate, your real property, that's equity. You have an equitable interest in that property. And it has to be real property, which means unmovable. So land, your house, barns, that kind of stuff. Real property. Not personal property. Not like your automobile and your motorcycle and your boat and that kind of stuff. So that's it. Suits at law. We're not supposed to have criminal stuff. We're not supposed to have civil courts. It's supposed to be all one court.
So that is...
You file a suit at law.
That part is Article 3, Section
2.
2, right. So they have highlighted the controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizen or subjects. I'm trying to see, but that continues on to where it said equity. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, see, what you're reading there, though, is under the Admiralty jurisdiction.
Okay.
To all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction.
Common. That's basically the same. It's the maritime version of common law, correct? More or less.
Well, it's supposed to be dealing with felonies, piracies,
right,
out on the high seas.
That wouldn't really fall. How would, I guess maritime law could fall under under kind of civil law if you're saying, well, no, this is my boat, or you owe me money for this boat.
Well, no, maritime is sea law.
Right.
Law of the sea.
Right. So that...
Not on land. Law of the land is the law of the land. Law of the sea is the law of the sea, and that's it.
Right.
That's all you got.
But it's... You'd have common law and maritime law at the same time. You know, before the Constitution, you had, you know, like the English courts. Were the English courts considered common law at the time? And then maritime law was separate from that? I'm not finding equity, the word equity, anywhere in Section 1, 2, or 3. What am I missing?
Article 3, Section 2, extent of judicial power. Supreme Court, trial trial and places of trial. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity.
Arising under this Constitution. Law and equity. So the family court system is a court of equity.
What is?
The family court system, wouldn't you call that a court of equity, technically?
No, because suits of equity have to do with real property. Houses, land. No, this is where reading congressional acts and all that stuff and how everything happened, we're under admiralty and maritime jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
They basically rewrote our Constitution through federal statutes.
Okay.
So everything is what they say it is.
Right.
And that's why we have a hard time making our arguments in court about the Constitution and talking about the Constitution. You know, even my judge was like, well, you know, you can't really make you can't really make constitutional arguments, but I'll let you talk about the Constitution in your closing arguments. Well, no. You don't get to dictate to me how I make my defense or how I make my arguments. I'm here to make my argument and put it on the record.
Your argument.
Then you can make your decision from there, and your decision better have points of authority.
Right.
And you're finding the facts.
So that our basic common law, what's dictated in our Constitution, what she swore an oath to uphold and protect, she wouldn't let you cite in your defense.
Yeah, she didn't want me making constitutional arguments, claims.
That's insanity. Why would... Because she doesn't want people to know that she's not following the Constitution.
Right. Well, and there's the other thing is, you know, when we were talking about getting it in and on the record, when you're making your oral argument is on the record, because that's what goes to the appellate court, the transcript of your oral arguments. So if you make your constitutional claims that the Constitution protects these rights, and I'm claiming usurpation of power. You don't have the power, and neither do this dumb shit over here to the left. They don't have the right to subvert the law.
Yeah.
Period. This is the law. This is what it says. It speaks for itself. I'm not responsible for you comprehending what the law says. That had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Especially if you're an appointed judge. And if you're of such feeble-minded, then you shouldn't even be on the bench. No, there's way too many family court judges who should not have anything to do with law, period. Most of them need education on constitutional law. But you do have situations.
So you know what? Why they had to do these family courts, right?
Well, it's a bastardized version of juvenile court. The thought was, we don't want to pay anymore in welfare. We need to, I mean, it really came from around the same time Prohibition did in the 20s, when there was a lot of alcoholism. It did come down to, we need, it literally was, we need these fathers taking care of their children, is what I read. Juvenile court started in 18-something. Family court technically started, or at least some of the first cases of child support go back to even the late 1800s, but wasn't really established until around 1918 or 1922, and then it wasn't until but they were based on action for divorce. You didn't go in front of these family courts for not
okay,
doing
you just
anything.
said it right there.
Right.
Actions for divorce. So prior to states creating the marriage license, and in essentially what has happened there is our religious right to get married by the church. Okay, that's why there's supposed to be a clergy member, ordained minister, to create the marriage.
Right.
But the state converted that religious right, because marriage is a religious right. Okay, that's protected by the First Amendment. Freedom to practice your religion.
Right.
And that's the reason why they abolished the common law marriage, because it's supposed to be handled through the church.
Right.
It's not supposed to involve the government.
Right. And
because they converted that right into a privilege, licensed it, and attached fees to it. Now, anytime that you have a license seeking permission from the government to do a thing that would otherwise be illegal, is it illegal? No, it can't be illegal. You can't make something illegal if it's lawful to do.
Mm-hmm.
If my religion says I can get married, that's a religious act. That has nothing to do with government, which is part of fundamental natural rights, God-given rights, okay? So they had to create jurisdictions regarding these contracts. That's all these are. That's the jurisdiction part. You know, like I was talking about before, is there's several elements to jurisdiction, and there's several parts to jurisdiction. It isn't just personal jurisdiction. It isn't just subject matter jurisdiction. Every time there's a contract created, because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Marriage license is a contract.
It's not a civil contract.
The government controls. They have to create the jurisdiction. Then they have to create the court to deal with that jurisdiction.
Yeah,
because it has to happen in a competent court, having proper authority to handle the subject matter.
No-fault divorce first started see, all these things I've learned about, but the dates are foggy to me. So in Russia, when control of the country changed, there was a war, and I don't remember. The war was the name, and the War of 1812 sticks out in my head, but I don't think that is correct. The Bolsheviks took power, I believe, and they were socialists, and what they wanted to do was create this no-fault divorce system and monetize housework. So in a social system like that, if you were a mother, you know, working at home, you know, taking care of the household, you got paid for it under communism. And a no-fault divorce in that sense would work. No-fault divorce now, it doesn't work on many different levels, because now we're working on with the same process as action divorce. You want to get a divorce, you automatically go in front of a judge. Well, that is simply unconstitutional, because you shouldn't be in front of a judge for doing nothing, one. Two,
nope.
We're not a socialist society unless we're going to start paying everybody for doing everything, and that's just not capitalism. And I know somebody just mentioned we need to stick with capitalism. Who was that? Who was that? Boward. Leslie Bauer. Is that right? Yeah, Leslie. Now,
yeah, so the way dealing with capitalism, that's the right to contract your labor as you see fit. That's me going to my next door neighbor and saying, hey, I'll mow your yard for $25 a week.
Contract, exactly.
That's between me and him. That's contracting my labor as I see fit.
And
that has nothing to do with government.
Right, exactly. Well, that brings us, so this thought of separating church and state and going all the way back to the church, and marriage should only be recognized by the church. The reason why the state took over is because of welfare. You know, all the way back to colonial law, before that to English law, you had mothers, you know, people are dying. Who is taking care of these mothers and children, especially when it comes to veterans, got people who have gone out to war, died. Somebody has to take care of these families. and that transformed or transitions right into, you know, if a mother and father aren't getting along, then you need to do something about it. That was action for divorce. You had no right to get a divorce if you weren't getting beaten, and that was found to be unconstitutional. You could be a slave in a marriage with there not being any action for divorce.
Well, seeing there again is the government. The government couldn't control that marriage.
Right. So what we need to do, like you said, a contract. I would never go into a contract with anybody unless everything was right there in plain sight, because if it isn't, you get ripped off. And I've had to put liens on a few people, and I always got paid before I went to court, but you always had to spend money to get your money, spend your time getting a lien and all this stuff. And if you had a more thorough contract, that wouldn't have been the case. And even though I had contracts on those, and one of them a very strict contract, it was still fine. I'll settle for $2,000 less than what you actually owe me. And if you had a marriage contract that was very similar, that you did while you were in love, not when you wanted to kill each other, there would be no incentive to go to court and fight over this stuff, because you already have a civil contract that is legally binding. And right now, the marriage contract, prenups, not a lot of people use them, so they get thrown out. But if everybody used a civil contract, that would be a completely different situation that you could not get out of. You could settle before you went to court if there was a problem, like, let's say there was 50-50 and one side was withholding the child, well, that would be contempt. Or if there was 50-50 and one side didn't want to see the child and wasn't paying anything monetarily to make up for that, that would be contempt. It's pretty easy. Set things like property, and this would all be future stuff. If we have future children, it is 50-50, blah, blah, blah. Or if you know you're going to travel, yada, yada, yada. Maybe some people could make up their own situations. But the base would be 50-50 shared custody. Because, you know, some things come up in people's lives. Sometimes it might be 60-40, 70-30. But houses, for instance. If you're a man, let's say, and you say, all right, we're going to have a future family, future house, future kids, I guarantee you that most men, at least 75% of men, will say, I would want you to keep the house, because who knows, I might be working, I might be overseas, I might be I'm going to be taking care of us in most situations, and I'd want you to keep the kids, or you to keep the house, so the kids would have an anchor. I'd certainly want to see them half of the time, but I don't want us to be splitting the house and selling the house and all this crap. I'll give you the house. You take the house, and I'll take the car, and all these things would be figured out while you truly had the other person's best interest in mind, not when you wanted to take a freaking plastic cup and bash their head in with it. That's how lawyers benefit off this situation, and that is the reason why we don't have a civil contract. We have an unconstitutional, no-fault divorce, and the reason why it's unconstitutional is because you have to go in front of a judge for doing nothing. I agree that action for divorce is unconstitutional, because even if there may not be real abuse in a marriage, there could be situations where, I mean, you could feel like a slave in that marriage for whatever reason. And right or wrong, I'm not the judge. I didn't make up that decision, but I definitely lean in agreement with that. But going from one unconstitutional thing to a completely unconstitutional procedure is mind-boggling. And the only thing that makes sense is the people who created it, lawyer politicians, were going to benefit off of it. It was freaking clear as day to them. Maybe they couldn't imagine how it would create this financial juggernaut of an institution stealing. I mean, if you take into consideration lawyers, I mean, we're now into trillions of dollars. But 100 billion easy with Title 4E, 50 billion easy with Title 4D. Then you put in the billions that the law firms and lawyers are getting off of the American people. Sky's the limit.
Well, and that's kind of, you know, the part of the information I want to put out there is, you know, if you're going to claim a right, you have to know where it comes from within the law itself.
Right.
Right? So where does marriage come from in law?
I don't know, Kirk, you tell me. I mean, where does it come from in law? It doesn't. Does it?
The Declaration of Independence, the law of nature.
Oh, fundamental law.
Marital rights and parental rights come from the law of nature, which have nothing to do with the establishment, support, or management of the government.
Right. It's your fundamental right to have children.
Let's go back to that separation of church and state, because this is a religious act. The state has no business creating a marriage license. They cannot legislate that right. They cannot convert that right into a government-controlled right. And then they can't use the executive branch to give support to that. Okay. And they can't use the judicial branch to manage that right. Because it's a religious act. So now, back in the day, it used to be you go to church. Hey, pastor, I'd like to get married. Okay? So you sit down and you talk with the pastor and you get some premarital counseling, and then you get married, and he is the one that's over. I don't know, I guess I can't just say he, but the pastor is the one that oversees your marriage. Mm-hmm. And if you have conflicts and problems within your marriage, you're supposed to seek counsel from the church.
Right.
And then if there's actual disputes, it's supposed to go through the church. The people of the church are supposed to sit down and form a jury and hear your claims and adjudicate that right there in church.
Jury. So
no court.
If the government, I mean, they will always go back to the fact that they will have to pay welfare. And since they have to pay welfare in these situations and not the churches, it is their responsibility. So if we have a civil contract, whether it's done through a church or not, that civil contract, if breached, will need to be upheld in front of a jury, certainly not a single judge, certainly not an appointed family court judge. We need a jury of our peers. And I guarantee you, if we had a contract, a legally binding civil contract, not the fake prenups or marriage license that we have now, the caseload, the family court caseload would drop drastically. I'm not talking even, I'm separate from abuse, because abuse and neglect is still technically action for divorce, and you're going to criminal court. But in a no-fault divorce proceeding, if it's a breach of contract, you're going to be going in front of a jury, and that caseload right there will drop, I believe, over 95%. There will be almost zero, because it's based on perception. Right now, our perception is you have to go to court, you have to win, right? You take that away, and the perception is, well, we already did this contract. You go to court for just some stupid reason. You're just wasting your money. And so the perception within 5 years is going to be like, well, I'm not going to just go to court and waste my money. There's no reason to, unless there's an action for divorce, or unless the parent is unfit. That would fall under technically neglect, I believe. And unless neglect or abuse can be proved through due process in front of a jury in criminal court, you're going to be in civil court with the same due process in front of a jury. Nobody's going to want to do that for no reason. Caseload is going to drop 95%. There's going to be maybe a few stupid, dumb mother effers who are like, I'm still going to court. But I bet even after 5 years, when the perceptions change, people are going to understand it. I'm just wasting my money. I already have this contract. I'm not going to get out of this contract. You know, unless I can truly find this person to be out of their freaking mind, even though they haven't been physically abusive, they've been neglectful, then there's no reason to go to court. There is no reason. There's no reason why we shouldn't be figuring these things out while we're in love and not when we want to kill each other. It's just a simple way to make money. So my solution is either fix the process or get rid of no-fault divorce, and we're never getting rid of no-fault divorce because action for divorce is unconstitutional. There's still action for divorce if there is an action for the divorce. That technically would still be action for divorce, but in a regular divorce proceeding, everything should be figured out if you don't want to be married for no reason. You shouldn't be going in front of a judge for no reason. Got to figure this shit out. That's what no fault is. Yep. It's supposed to be a contract, a real contract, not just let me marry you to fuck you. I mean, let me marry you to take everything you own, which is happening even without kids. We know that. All these things need to happen without a frivolous, thoughtless prenup that means practically nothing. It needs to be a civil contract that happens before people can get married. I'm sorry, Las Vegas, Atlantic City, but that's just the way it has to be.
That's the thing. Marriage is supposed to be a sacred vow between the two people and God.
Right. But it can't because because of welfare. If a veteran dies, then the government has to come in to take...
No. You can't do that because of welfare.
Right.
That welfare is irrelevant to the fact of where marriage comes from.
Well, yeah. Well, technically, but it's why the government stepped in. So if you have, let's say you have two families. One family, the male just died overseas, let's say. So what do you do with the mother and the children of this dead soldier? You don't say, well, you're screwed. You take care of them. And on that same principle, let's say a person dies through alcoholism in this country, and this is why things like Alcoholics Anonymous started in 1928, is we need a solution to this problem. We can't have people dying and leaving their families behind for nobody to take care of. They're living on the streets. No, the government steps in and takes care of it. So then that creates the situation where government starts, okay, we need to do this to prevent that. And what has happened is in 1970, lawyer politicians created no-fault divorce, leaving out correct procedure for it, simply to benefit themselves. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense. Nobody... Oh. Kirk is...
Sorry, my laptop shut off because it wasn't... the power strip wasn't turned on, so the battery died, and I was like, why is my laptop shutting off?
Well, it's good we had you on the phone, too.
Right.
I'll ask you to start your video. And by the way, we should probably finish this up in a little bit, but that's, if anybody wants to call in, Chris picked up on my F word, my almost F word. I caught myself though. So Leslie Bauer, I always try to read her comments because she's on point most of the time. Now we have to pay to find fault. What is really unconstitutional? Governor Reagan is the one who started it and it took off. We can rescind that. Texas is trying to. Well, that's good for Texas. If that's what you mean by TX, I'm pretty sure. I wish I could talk to Ronald Reagan, even if he was alive. I'd never be able to, but or anybody who is still alive who put this bill together. And And I always say I want to do some more research on this, but guaranteed a lot of them are dead. Mark Young says, don't make the state the third party to your marriage. Stay independent with a common law marriage. And he gives a link here. But still, even with a common law marriage, in most states, you're going to be in front of a judge.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying. This is a religious act. This is supposed to be done through the church, not government. Separation of church and state. This is a religious act. This comes from the law of nature. Marital rights and parental rights come from the law of nature, and they're protected by the Ninth Amendment.
It's interesting you say the Ninth Amendment, because that's the Bill of Rights and the Ninth Amendment, I believe, is how we're going to that's going to be part of our end game.
Yeah, rights retained by the people. The enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Because James Madison, you know, he argued the point of having a Bill of Rights because there are so many rights. How do you list all of the rights without missing even one?
Right.
In a Bill of Rights.
Wouldn't sign.
How do you do that? You can't.
Right.
Our rights are so enormous. The amount of rights that we actually have under the law of nature and under life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, there's an enormous amount of rights within there. Like I said, the right to contract your labor is how you see fit.
Right.
Is a right.
That's why.
But where is that in the Constitution? Where is that in the Bill of Rights?
Right. And it's interesting. I mean, I wish we had video of when these people were signing things, because most of the signatures on the Constitution didn't come until after the Bill of Rights was created. People wouldn't sign it.
Right. And, you know, there's another argument I have, is that the Constitution itself is fraud.
Which version? The original one or the updated one?
Any and every single one of them. Article 7. What does Article 7 say? The ratification, attestation. The ratification of the Convention of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same. How many states did we have in 1787?
13. Or was Ohio?
Yeah, 13. Now, what does the Articles of Confederation say?
Let me see.
Nothing can change with the Articles of Confederation. Nothing can change unless every single state says, okay, we agree to the change.
So why are there...
That makes the Constitution fraud.
So then why are
right
states...
there, on its face, says 9 shall be sufficient. No, not in accordance with the law.
Is it fraud?
At the time the Constitution was being ratified, was it lawfully done?
Would then state constitutions be more fraud than the Constitution itself?
No.
No?
No. You know, and see, and this is what goes into what happened with the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. You know, what the war was really about was states' rights, individual sovereignty. Now, I know a lot of people out there don't like to hear about talk about sovereignty and sovereign this, sovereign that, and then go into sovereign citizen, which is an oxymoron.
Yeah, that's when I start hearing that too.
So the war was between the North and the South. Well, the North, who was the North? They were the Federalists. Federalism. The South was the Confederates. Confederalism against federalism.
Interesting.
We were the South was against having a centralized power.
I see. So that's why we have this thing right now in our movement of small pockets of group groups with a few members and a bunch of people who aren't members of groups. The anti-group, the non-group, or the con group.
Right. So the history books will tell you that the Civil War was about slavery, when in fact it was not. It had nothing to do with slavery.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of. I used to work with a tile guy. He did all our tile work. He was from Savannah, and he had a little Confederate flag sticker, like on his bumper, a little one. But he wasn't one of those guys that flew the flag, and he wasn't racist. He never said the N-word or anything, which I have a huge problem with. Thank you, Drew Garabo, of Drew Garabo Live. But he would always tell me, or not always, but when it came up in conversation about these little facts about the Confederacy, and I'm like, well, history is made by the people who won, so I'm not going to say you're incorrect. You're probably right. I certainly didn't learn anything that you're talking about. And that goes right into what you said. It certainly had nothing to do with slavery. It had much more to do with a way of power, money, property. But
control.
Exactly.
That was the thing, is they were trying to go to complete federalism, back to the crown, having this complete control over our country and over we the people. Basically trying to get this communism back in here. And the Confederates, the South, says, no, we're not doing that.
Yep. It's an interesting history, man. Hey, if anybody wants to call in real quick before we wrap this up, we've certainly covered quite a bit. Leslie says, what did the Confederates want then? Chris says the Confederates wanted state government only, not centralized government.
If you really want to have just a quick understanding, look up the term federalist or federalism and confederacy, and look at the difference between federalism and the Confederacy.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
The Confederacy, if you read the Articles of Confederation, was very, very limiting on government. Okay? Because at that time we were supposed to be self-governed.
Right.
That's the false impression that we have now, is that we're supposed to be a republic, by the public rule. And it's not, and it's not a democracy where your rights get put to a vote.
It is.
The one out there about possible Benjamin Franklin quote is, the difference. What is the difference between republican and a democracy? Is that democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for dinner, and a republic is a well-armed lamb objecting to the vote.
That's interesting. That's a republic. And so we need to be better armed.
By the public.
We need to be better armed lambs, is basically what's happening here. The wolves, the judiciary.
That's the whole point behind the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Oh,
and where does the Second Amendment actually come from? Defending life and liberty. But see, there's a Declaration of Arms out there. I believe it's June 12th of 1775.
Let's take this caller, Kirk. Let's see who it is, and then
sure,
go from there. 8460. You are on the Marches Live with Kirk Pendergrass. Who are we speaking with, please? Area code 352. Wait, or is that?
Hey, what's going on, bro?
Chris. Mr. Hallett, how are you?
Oh, not too shabby. Not too shabby. What are you guys up to tonight?
You're watching. Thank you for watching.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Rebecca even was the one who reminded me what time it was. I've been busy writing pretty much all the day today and backing and forth in between the clerk's office and blah, blah, blah.
Well, thank you. And you were on the Far From Normal show last night too. Busy.
Sure was.
Well, thank you for calling in.
So yeah, not a problem. I didn't even realize you were doing this on Wednesdays.
Yeah, it used to be. I've changed all over the place. Sometimes if I'm backed up or somebody can't do the show, I do it. I find a different guest and do it on Thursdays. And it used to be a daily show. I'm trying to find my seat, I guess, exactly where I want to do it. I'd like to keep it on Wednesdays.
I hear you, brother. I hear you. Oh, that's what I'm working on too. Trying to build something that literally doesn't exist is not an easy prospect.
No, and you were mentioning a little bit of your work last night, and you mentioned some things that we talked in person about when we met in Florida. But did you have a specific question for Kirk, or did you want to talk about something specific, talk about the work that you're doing? I'd love to hear more about that, and I'm sure Kirk would too.
Well, there's as far as the work I'm working on right now, it's, for lack of a better expression, it's a criminal indictment. I mean, on its face, you got to call it what it is. So,
but specifically,
but it's based on a piece of.
Not necessarily against the judges, correct?
No. Right. Just the actors in the room.
Right.
As far as if there was, basically the way we've constructed this thing is if we've left it open for the judges to handle their own, right? That's the way they prefer it, right? So we say, okay, we're going to play ball with you, right? Your house, your game, your rules.
Okay.
Here's what the Constitution says. Here's what's happened. Here's our assessment of it. Here's how we think the law should be applied. What do you think? And they're standing there and they're looking at this thing going, son of a bitch. This guy, these people are making sense here, So that's where we are. And so to say, I can't speak for the judge to know what exactly she's going to say, but I can tell you when she walked out of the room the other day, when she put us in recess, she was not a happy camper.
Oh,
because the specific details are so clear and so evident, and because of you can basically specifically say that they purposely withheld this piece of the Constitution so they could do what they're doing, which is exactly what we've done, what we've said. And here's all the stuff that shows it. So, it's like, oh my God, it's a real way. It's a, eye-opening moment for all of us.
This is, so I don't know how much I could say, but you had 3 cases, one including your own, and so you've been successful in 2 for the most part. And so this one you're talking about specifically is in what state?
Well, obviously mine was filed in Florida against Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay. And that case is currently being argued as the monopoly challenge, for lack of a better expression.
That's your
in case. The 2nd District or the 11th District Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, well, it's never been anything other than this. So show us what you're talking about, right? And even the Attorney General from Ohio said, you know what? Yeah, he's right. This is judicial jurisdiction. He's not going to admit that it's a monopoly, but he did admit that it is under judicial jurisdiction. So they've even conceded to the fact that we're going to continue this argument. And so I said, okay, well, I constructed a completely different argument than anything any lawyer's ever put together before, using the Constitution, using all the legal doctrine, and all of their stuff. I didn't write this. They wrote it. So I just took it and shuffled the deck and made my own thing. And the first case in Texas resulted in a criminal defense. Was a criminal defense. Reasonable doubt was established, and the prosecution was literally terminated and deemed a sham. Right?
Okay.
So they terminated the case. The guy's name is completely clear. He's got good standing. He can go get his kid, which is exactly what he's doing. So that problem was solved. The granted, he's still fighting to get his kid back, but the prosecution, the thing that they were holding the gun to his head, that's gone. Okay, so the silver bullet crap that we've been dealing with for how long?
Right.
That was that was the first win. And the second one, which is almost the exact same argument with a few twists here and there, was on behalf of a mom defending her and her son, that resulted in
you said a bomb. Sorry, you said a
pretty much a reverse prosecution, and that's where we stand. So,
reverse prosecution.
Right.
So this mother was being charged with what?
Well, I obviously I can't go into the circumstances, but it suffices to say that the allegations were made, and she was found in contempt with no evidence, and it's a bigger sham than the first one, right?
Right. So,
we took that before the federal court. The federal court recognized it and said, duh. So, as far as the rest of the circumstances in the lower court, we're still arguing all of that now, and I've got a secondary supplemental brief that we're getting ready to drop in the state court.
Oh,
but
here they come, Kirk.
We're doing that tomorrow. So I'm hoping to be pretty much wrapping this sucker up by the end of the end of next month.
And that was the one. So I wanted, before, months ago, I had asked you, if you thought this would be wrapped up in time for the event, and if you could share this information at the event, because just the thought of saying we are working with the judges, telling them, getting them on our side, saying it's not your fault necessarily. You've been duped by this legislation just as we have. That's
correct.
Huge, and goes kind of against what a lot of people are saying, a lot of people are thinking, which I thought was speech-worthy, very speech-worthy for the event, especially if you were successful. But you have another month before you're 100% on this case. But it's looking good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as soon as the federal judge comes out and orders the indictment, that's it, we're done.
Right.
Because the state prosecutor takes over, or the federal prosecutor, whoever the judge wants to assign, and we're okay with that. And we basically, settle the terms and conditions of the civil case and remand for prosecution, which is kind of basically what cops do when they conduct an investigation and they hold over for criminal prosecution. Well, we just did it through civil court. The exact same thing that law enforcement usually does. And, so we followed their same process, the whole bit. And, now we are at that point where we're transitioning from the civil into the criminal. And that's the big key right there. Because establishing a defense is one thing. Establishing something that they can be indicted for, that's a whole different animal. That's a game changer.
Right.
So that's the thing that we're waiting on right now. What's that?
Is this going to get rid of the bar or what?
Well, basically what we're going to do, what I propose that we do, and is as far as the criminal defenses and, lawyers outside of the system are concerned, they shouldn't be part of the bar. They should be independent practitioners which would afford people countless numbers of choices and countless numbers of ideas and, you know, ways to argue their particular situation, right? I mean, when you put it all together, that's what due process is. Okay, that's why when the system was devised, that counsel was only supposed to be there to assist you. Okay.
Right.
Now it's the lawyers have taken over under a monopoly. Well, that's that they can't do. So the best way to do this is to go back to the way that we used to, the way that it was designed to be, which is counsel is just assisting, right?
Yes.
And the best way to do that is to take that monopoly and be done with it. Now, as far as how do we still maintain prosecutions, well, that's the easy thing. That what I propose is if you put $10 million into the prosecutor's office, you should have to put $15 million into the defense attorney's office, right? So, because that's not the way it is. I mean, it's way less than opposite of that. Let's just put it that way. I mean, the poor public defenders, they literally got nothing. They got, you know, a couple of thousand cases with what, 5, 6 guys or, you know, women or whoever. There's no way in hell they could talk about overloaded. So,
yeah.
What I proposed is also to allow for attorneys to claim their pro bono hours by also participating in the criminal defense pool, right? And help relieve the load of the public defender's office. Mm-hmm. So, which is going to be very effective in cases like, for example, that are highly technical or highly skilled cases, something that requires specialized knowledge. Science and technology. We'll use the iPhone case that was just litigated, for example. If I were the iPhone company, I would want somebody litigating for me who had knowledge, technical knowledge, of how telecommunications works at the very least. So when you're explaining to the court and you're explaining to the judge without going into a whole, you know, massive explanation, you can break it down and enunciate to where the court can understand pretty much just what I've done with the negative nexus and give the court something tangible to chew on, right? But with the way it is right now, the only thing that anybody's ever arguing is civil rights. Well, why is that? Because that's all they know and understand.
Right.
Interesting.
You know, believe me, there's a hell of a lot more to this world than civil rights.
Yeah, just joined,
and half of those civil rights aren't even civil rights; they're natural rights.
Right, and I mean, let's look at this from the conflict of interest standpoint, Kirk. If you read any of the dogma that comes out of, you know, all of these, you know, liberal schools, for example, everything is geared towards social control, right?
Yep.
Because they talk about prisons and prison reform and alternative sentencing. But inside prison, the goal is social control, right? Because they have to maintain that to maintain discipline. These guys will kill each other. Let's call that spade a spade. Well, what the lawyers have done is they've attempted to enforce that same mentality outside the prison. Okay, so that's where social justice comes from, right? So social justice is a spawn of these social control warriors. Well, that I've said is in conflict of interest with.
Comes in.
Well, even over and above that, I've said that right there, that mentality, okay, is, if you want to look at this from the political correct standpoint, that, you know, political correctness and social justice is a substandard of what the court recognizes. The court doesn't even recognize social justice. It recognizes honorable justice, right? So this is why these people get all pissed off, because they can say, oh, you know, there's all these social injustices. Well, define that. It's undefinable. Your version of it is different than my version of it, that's different than Ted's version of it, and so on and so forth. So it's not definable. It's just something to argue over. Well, it's a substandard. Throw it away. And the way to do that is eliminate the bar. Eliminate the ones who started it. And by doing that, we say, okay, look, you have a responsibility as a human being to make your own destiny. It's always been that way. People aren't going to hand you your life, right? Okay, your life is what you make it. If you choose to not make anything of it, that's your fault. That's not anybody else's fault. Well, because of this social justice mentality, that's not the way these people think. They're proceeding on a lesser standard on something that doesn't exist, that the court doesn't even recognize. No wonder they're pissed off.
We just were joined by Jay Moss, Chris. Hey, Jay, thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Jay, what are you doing?
Hey, I'm just hanging out with you guys tonight. Hey, I had a bunch of stuff going on, so I figured, hey, I'll put that to the sidebar and come on in tonight because obviously you guys are well versed in the law and how this works in this system because, going into this, political injustice that we're talking about here is really an illusion. It's based on the perception of the beholder. I mean, if you feel offended, suddenly this is political injustice on your part. I feel offended. Oh my God. Well, what if I'm offended that you're offended?
Okay.
That's exactly right. What happens when you get offended? You get tennis elbow? I mean, what the hell? What's the side effect here?
That's what contempt of court is. That's simple. That's exactly what contempt of court is. I'm offended. Contempt of court, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I hurt your feelings.
Yeah. And you got the definition of due process. It's a judicial requirement that enacts laws that may not contain provisions that result in unfair, arbitrary, and unreasonable treatment of an individual. Well, that's every damn court in America.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you look at the word arbitrary, what do they call alternative litigation? Arbitration.
Yes.
It's arbitrary on its face.
Well, you've got a problem in America when a lawyer opens up a practice. Aren't you supposed to be a professional here? It's not
you would
practice.
think.
So what's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
I don't want somebody to practice.
No, that's true. That's true. It's true.
So what is the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
Sure.
This sounds like a joke. Okay, tell me the punchline.
No, this is real. This is real. And see, this is the part I want to correct out here. We talk about the word game all the time. A lawyer is a law sayer, one who is knowledgeable on the law and speaks the law. An attorney is one who attorns you and is a member of the bar, the British Accreditation Registry, from the British Crown.
Would you like to know?
That is what an attorney is.
Would you like to
know?
I guess
that explains why the state of Florida called me that, because part of my background, my granddad on my father's side actually came from Britain. So
we've got another caller. Real quick, this is the definition of contempt, just so you all know. The feeling that a person or thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. That is what contempt is, and judges are using this.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
let's see.
Your feelers got hurt, so you're in contempt.
Exactly. I think you're worthless, so you're in contempt of court. So, hello,
right.
3391. Who is this, please? 3391. You're on the Marches Live.
Well, they'll ask their questions when they get ready.
This is
This is Ante Peric, former Croatian Anthony. How's it going, fellas?
Oh, hey.
Dude.
How are you? Croatian Anthony, you have a different name?
This is turning into a powwow.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know, I'm getting like 40, 50 people messaging me, telling me to get on the show and stuff like that. So, you know, I had a pretty adventurous day today in a criminal court proceeding.
Oh, wow.
That, you know, bogus charges, as usual. But I had an interesting thing happen because the court, the domestic relations court, finally admitted that the ex admitted holding the contract, which, because she didn't give it up to me before, you know, I wasn't able to exonerate myself on this false charge. But now, you know, I got the higher court, which is a common pleas, you know, domestic relations. They gave a magistrate's order that identified the ex did indeed have this contract that would have cleared my name in the lower criminal court. So, you know, like how Chris was talking about, with everybody talking about different strategies and different things, you know, basically everybody complaining about it.
Is that limine?
It's one thing. It's one thing for us to be complaining about it, but we've definitely got to come up with a solution for the problem in the process of our complaints. You know, we all know the system sucks. So, like Chris was saying, we got to get rid of this bar. This bar is the problem, and it doesn't matter whether it's civil courts through the family courts or whether it's criminal courts.
Right.
You know, because I've had experience with both. And here's the thing, they want to play by their rules and hold us to their rules, but then they don't even follow their own rules. And that's where we got to, that's what we as a people have to completely rid this country up.
Yep.
You know, otherwise we're just spinning in circles.
I think
so you want to get rid of the bar, we got to go back to the War of 1812, because that's when the Communist Lawyers Guild, the bar, came in and from England, you know, because we were at war with England again, which seems to be a nonstop thing back then.
Right.
And they burned our capital. They were trying to destroy the original 13th Amendment, which anyone who took a title of nobility, because attorneys are esquires. That's the title of nobility from the King of England.
Certainly is.
Okay, so the War of 1812, they wanted to stop us. We already fully ratified the original 13th Amendment. So because
they want to interfere with that. You know, and you know, I come from Croatia, you know, former Yugoslavia, so we are used to it, either the communist country or a monarchy in that region, as a Balkan, as a Viking. You know, I mean, this is something that's historically proven throughout that region of reign of terror. You know, and that, you know, we get the promise, you know, coming to America, you get to live the American dream, the great American life, and you know, we just come here, and it's basically you're dealing with the same kind of force that you were in the old land. And, you know, I grew up in a communist country. I know what a communist looks like. You know, just because they call themselves something else, you know, doesn't change the game. And that's what that's what the problem is with the bar, with this nobility, this monarchy, this whatever you want to call it.
Actually, Kirk, yeah, if going back to what Kirk was saying, we don't even have to go back to the War of 1812. All we have to do is go to the Declaration of Independence. And it clearly states, by that practice, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, sounds like where we are, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security.
And this is why
this can be done at any time.
Right.
Okay. That's per the Declaration of Independence. Okay. You don't need case law to do that. All you need is a long train of abuses and usurpations.
Exactly.
Guess what? I can walk into any state in the union and drop in my my practice on any town USA and find enough people to be able to literally retire on. And you're going to tell me that this is not a long train of abuses and usurpations? So are practicing, under the rules of the Declaration of Independence alone, we can do that whenever we feel like it. We don't need their permission, right? So, but to have the court say, yes, we agree with you, okay, when we walk into Congress and say, hey, we've made this allegation, the court says, hey, you know what? That's exactly right, because this entity is attacking the integrity of the court. It's attacking the integrity of the Constitution on its face. And it's time to throw it off and change how we're doing business.
We just have another caller real quick. 6513. Who is this, please? 6513.
That's Kirk.
That's Kirk. Oh, did you call in a second time, Kirk?
No, my phone disconnected right in the middle of me talking about the...
That's what happened. I thought we had another
the 13th Amendment.
It came up JM, just like Jay Moss, so I'm like... So I messaged Jay, it wasn't him. But, yeah, the Declaration of Independence and the 9th Amendment kind of tie together that way. And that's what this individual, I think I mentioned him to you too, Marty in Arizona, that's what he's working on for kind of an end game. Somebody who's doing something similar as you, Chris, but slightly different. It's interesting how...
You talking about Marty out there?
Marty, yeah, Martin.
Yeah, he's doing some pretty cool work.
Yeah, everybody, all of us together, I think have an ultimate solution that if we all start working together slightly, we could really have an end game. And I'm trying to put something like that together with everybody. And
exactly.
One thing
I would be totally down for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I really like about Chris's work is there's a mathematical formula.
Yeah.
1 + 1 = 2 in any language you speak. Now I speak 5 languages. Math is math, and now that we've got a mathematical formula that we can put to the court, like, listen, man, this is not like a mystery here. It's not some complex algorithm. It's a simple formula, one that can be applied to every single case. There is.
Yeah. Algebra 101.
So, how about 2 + 2 = 4? Let's start with the basics, because a lot of people don't even know the basic principles behind our law here in this country. It goes all the way back to Magna Carta 1215.
Yeah, oh God, don't get me started.
Yeah, they don't. You got to understand. But that's the society as a whole, because they purposely dumb down this society. I love America. I would gladly put my life on it. And my children are here. My family is here. I love this country. Okay, and just like I love Croatia, where I was born, where my family was raised. Where I have 800 years on my father's side, 600 years on my mother's side. I love the country. I love the land I'm in. But at the same time, me being a contractor, I come to a house that's completely dilapidated. What do I have to do to make the house right? Well, you got to gut it sometimes. Sometimes you don't. And when you gut it, you redo it anew, and you do it better than it was. And, that's where we're at in our legal system. We've got to completely gut the bar from the legal system and completely restructure it in a proper and simple fashion. When the laws are so complex that a 15-year-old kid cannot read the law and say, this is what's right and this is what's wrong, we got an issue.
I like your
analogy. It's not the law that's not comprehensible. It's the practice and the rules of the practice that are so unfrickin' believably convoluted, you'll never figure it out.
Family court started off as they said this in divorce court, I believe. Well, it was a 5 or 10 page pamphlet. Now that it's this labyrinth of documentation bigger than the Bible. No layman can get through this thing. And
the Florida Rules of Civil Procedure 720 pages.
Oh my God!
Right, and I'll agree that I'll agree that what Croatian Anthony said, because obviously he's talking about dulling down society. We even talked about this last night on the Far From Normal radio show. We talked about how in school what they're doing is they're teaching that there's 3 branches of government. There's actually 4 that have to do with the 4th branch being the press and being we the people. And unfortunately, Thomas Jefferson even spoke about the 4th branch being the one that needed to overthrow or keep the government in check. We are the judicial oversight. So the problem is we're just not being we're not doing our job and being over.
Problem is the 90s. That's
or the Clintons, you know.
It's.
I don't know, dude. I came out swinging pretty good in my report.
What year was that?
Yeah, that report sort of kicked them in underneath the robe and, you know, sent it all the way up and like, here, you dropped a couple of these. Oh, what are they called? It's just one of those things where, like, people ask me, how do you know so much about what goes on in this country? Well, you know what we do in Europe? We study America.
Yeah.
What we do. We study America. And we watch it. And, you know, it's weird because, you know, they always say, you know, those who, you know, history is doomed to repeat itself because people don't want to change. Well, what we're watching, you know, one thing I have noticed is that America, just since the 50s, you know, just since the 50s alone, America, it isn't that it's repeating history, it's actually digressing. You know, in the 50s, people worked, they taught, that you had family morals and values much more than we do nowadays. Like, if people nowadays went back to the 50s, they'd be lost. They wouldn't know what to do. What do you mean you have to go to work and provide for your family? And what do you mean you have to teach your children morals and values? Wait a minute. Let's be politically correct. And they'd be looked at as asinine back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Hell, dude, we were doing that in the 80s. I was 14 years old working on a construction site.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
it really happened.
I came to this country within 1 week. I didn't even know how to speak the language. I was 13 years old. Within 1 week, I had a job. And when I hear people say, you know, that they can't, or they can't do this, you know, I have every obstacle there is in life to overcome. And you know what? I've never used it as an excuse. Bottom line is, too many people want to lay back on excuses. Now, I understand all about trauma, and I understand all about, you know, the things that happen to us in these court cases and how it affects us inside. Believe me, I'm a victim myself, so I get it. But at the same time, that's where you just got to muster it up. You got to suck it up. And, you know, I thank Chris. You know, he's been a great support to me on this, you know, and he's like, hey, quit playing in the soapbox. You know, get the fuck out of the soapbox. He's been a fantastic help and encouragement to my heart. And that's another thing. You know, I see too many people within all these groups just cutting each other down. That shit needs to stop. Really. We need to completely cease all that, as Chris would put it, soapbox shit. Put all the butthurt aside. And you know what? We just need to encourage, uplift, and edify each other. Because you know what? We've all been there. We all know what it takes. We know, you know, everybody has a different point of view. We get all that. But you know what? The one point of view that we got to remain consistent in is in the point of view of love. We got to love ourselves. We got to love each other. And we got to understand that when somebody's suffering, they can't see. They're blind. They've been made by the legal system. And they can't see shit. And, you know, that's where, you know, other people are coming up with good ideas. Like, you know, Misa has put together this little system for people who can't afford lawyers. So he went through every single state, and he put together this program where, you know, you can now grab the state's own filings so you know how to properly file things, and he put together all the forms and stuff like that, and he's doing a great thing for a lot of people out there who don't have the money to hire an attorney. You don't have the money.
Who is doing this,
play
Anthony?
the legal.
Who is this you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Who is this individual you're talking about? You're working with?
Isaac oh man, Chris, you're in the group with all of us. What's Miza's screen name?
Oh God, you want me to go on Facebook now?
It's all right. I was just curious. You can message me later, maybe.
Yeah. Also get a hold of Nathan Cruz, because this is something that is a cooperation between a bunch of us putting it together. And
Okay.
what we're trying to do is just trying to show people proper procedures and proper filings, and that way they don't just get wrapped up in lost. Because let's face it, not even these bar members know all the filings.
Right.
They look at
Yeah, I mean, there is no such thing as a standardized form. I mean, that's why I created the group that I created, so I could post my work.
Right.
And fortunately, a bunch of people have started posting their works as well. So take John Gentry for example.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
That man is. I mean, he is every definition of a Marine. I can tell you right now. You think I come out swinging? He makes me look like a choir boy. I swear to God.
Plug your group real quick, Chris.
And the way he does it is awesome, because it's
I know, dude. It's beautiful. It's art.
It's art. And that's your group. That's called Amber and Steven, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's I try to keep up on that. Well, guys, I think
John punches them in their face, they shake his hand like, "Thank you for punching us in our face."
Guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. We're on 2.5 hours now, and I really appreciate you both calling in, and Jay Moss coming on video with us. That was awesome. I'd like to give Kirk just a minute before we close down to give us any like a final thought, to make sure everybody know where to find your show now that it's on Facebook, and I think we'll call it a night. So thank you, Anthony, very much for calling in. I don't think we talk enough. And Chris, thank you. It's you're one of those people that if I feel like we're spinning our wheels, I can call you, and you always make me feel better about what we're doing. So,
anytime, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it.
Yep. It's always better when somebody else does it.
Yeah, well, when you feel like, when there's so much infighting, like Anthony said, and you're feeling really down and not appreciated, and the work you're doing is just not going anywhere, you know that Chris is there still working, and he's still got something going on that's really valid and really has a good chance. And so whenever I get to that point, there's a few people like that I call. Brian Kinter is one of them, but Chris, I know, is always, he's got this unique idea, and he's going after it, and he's succeeding. And to me, that's just absolutely incredible. And he's just such a valuable asset to all of us in this. I couldn't imagine not having him around and being able to talk to him and get that motivation and that hopefulness that we're going to do this.
Yeah, so next time an F4 hurricane comes for Florida, you just better scoot out of there, because there's a lot of us that need that, Chris.
yeah,
message received. Message received.
I mean, Chris's work is epically brilliant. By saying epically brilliant, that's just downplaying it. I mean, it's something that I've reviewed carefully myself. I've me and him talk daily, almost. And it's something that, one, nobody can say he's wrong. Two, it's working, and and it's just one of those things where when we have something that's pure like this, that's common sense,
right.
everybody just needs to fully support that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's just as simple as the basics of, hey, just as basic as it is that a child needs both parents, Chris's work is that basic to law. The law needs Chris's work.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So I'm really looking forward to what comes out of this in a month. But thank you, Chris, again. Thank you, Anthony. Kirk, real quick, last words of wisdom, and plug your show, please.
Well, I'd just like to make a little funny here. Is I wish Chris would have contacted me before he filed all this paperwork, because I feel like he's in contempt of me, and my feelings are hurt. I think we could have done better, but I do want to give props to Chris. I mean, that takes some cojones to go up against them for doing what he's doing, and amen, brother. Keep it rocking. Let's hope something happens, something changes.
Hey, like I said last night, there is no wrong answer. Everybody's just got to do what you know. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The efforts, bottom line, is going to bless our children for generations to come, and that, in the end, that's what it's all about.
That's what we're fighting for. We all came into this, most of us, because of our children, and because of that motivation, we're fighting for all children. We're not going to let anybody's children go through this. So Kirk's show is every Monday from 8 to 10. It's now streaming live on Facebook under Kirk's Law Corner, correct?
On the page. Thank you, Ted, for setting that up.
And of course, I'll share it here on the Marches page and as many groups as I can. And the show is called Law for Dummies with Kirk Pendergrass. And it's also, for now, it's also on the Marches YouTube channel. It's on the Marches Twitter. So anybody following there who isn't on Facebook will see it there. But please, everybody, go to Kirk's Law Corner, click the like button, and because it's a page, you won't get notifications unless you click see first, because they make people pay. They make pages pay to be in the news feed. So make sure on all the pages, the Marches page you click first, the Far From Normal page you click first, and Kirk's Law Corner you click first, so you never miss any of these shows, although I'm going to try to share them as many places as I can. But just today, I've been banned from sharing on groups because I share to so many groups. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Even my own group, even the Marches group. It's the weirdest thing. So
well, you need to spread that around a little bit and have a group of us, share in certain groups, and you share in certain groups, and they share, so spread it out a little bit.
That would be the
And I kind of like to give a little plug, which I forgot on my Kirk's Law Corner, on the Law for Dummies show. I'm working with the guys at American Common Law Academy out here in Nampa, Idaho.
Nice.
And, we got Lee Arthur Rice. We have Tony Pellegrino. We have Yesiah that's come on. He's kind of a technical guy. He's learning law stuff. We have Bales Bondsman. She's, teamed up with us. We actually have a lawsuit we'll be working with her on. And then we have Fred Kelly Grant, man that's been in law for 61 years, federal courts judge's clerk. He's been a prosecuting attorney. He's been a defense attorney. He's worked with representatives, legislators, mayors. He has a wealth of knowledge, and in the end, he's gotten into the Title 42 stuff, and he has never lost a case.
Wow.
So, I am trying to get some of my personal stuff taken care of here at home, and stuff that I've got going on, and I'm going to start dedicating more of my time through ACLA and start really learning this stuff, learn how to do it right, and so I don't lose. I don't want to lose. I don't like losing.
A team.
If I'm gonna do something, I want to do it right, and I want to win.
That's great. Yeah, a team locally where you can talk with people, especially you know, a killer team like that, sounds like you'll be able to put something together that will work. That's awesome.
Thomas Edison failed. They asked Thomas Edison, why did you fail 200 times before you created the light bulb? He said, I didn't fail 200 times. I just found 200 ways not to create the light bulb.
Exactly.
You know,
it's called a draft.
Right. There's no failing as long as you keep moving forward. And, you know, people like us will never give up. We'll keep going until we create the light bulb and end the family court system, put the power back in the people's hands to make sure that what the judiciary has done over the last 200 years can never happen again. Thank you, guys.
Yep, and if we all come together, you know, we all have different ideas, and we've all read different stuff. You know, there's no way that any one of us can read everything that's out there.
All right.
So each one of us has our own skill set and abilities and knowledge, and if we share that with each other, man, we could be seriously powerful.
I'm right there with you. We're going to do that. Everybody hold on right there. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to button up the broadcast, and then we can talk afterwards real quick. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Live. There's still 8 of you hanging on. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to try to get a Wheel of Judiciary together for Friday, so don't miss that. And then the following show, they're going to try to get another broadcast going between Friday and Sunday. But don't miss Kirk's Law Corner, Law for Dummies, this Monday at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. It's every Monday. The Far From Normal show with Bud Vino and Jay Moss and Jesse Weiner at 8 to 10 every Tuesdays. And of course me, the Marches, live every Wednesday from 8 till whenever I get sick of broadcasting, which today it's 10:30. So I love you all. I'll see you next week.
All right, much love, brothers.
Take care.